Just
Please.
All right, so this week we're going to go over 16, 17, and maybe get into 18. If we get into 18, we'll have to kind of wing it a little bit, but it's pretty straightforward. Lost ball and things like that. So all right, so 16, we started this last week a little bit, but again, we're talking about abnormal course conditions, and again this year that is including movable obstructions, which are now grouped into this definition. And then just so that everyone's clear when we're going through this, we're talking about an animal hole, ground under repair, immovable obstruction, and temporary water are the four areas that are defined as abnormal course conditions. All right, so let's see here. We have interference, obviously, when the ball it touches or is in or on an abnormal course condition, or if the abnormal course condition physically interferes with the player's area of their stance or their intended swing. And this is straightforward. However, when the ball's on the putting green, an abnormal course condition on or off the putting green intervenes on the line of play. So line of play is only available, or there's only interference from a line of play when the ball is on the putting green. Okay, so that sprinkler box that's 15 yards in front of us, that we're gonna have to play over that or around that. But if our ball was on the green and there was a sprinkler head on the green, which we have at a few of our courses, Arbor Hills has one that I know about, that players would be able to take relief from that, and they would cut through that. Okay, and then this last part here just says that if it's close enough to distract the player, there's no interference. So if there's no mental interference, using the old terms, or there's no, if you're distracted by it, doesn't matter. It has to be in your lie, your ball, your swing, or your stance. But the committee can make a local rule modifying that, saying that we're only going to give relief if it's in your area of your swing or your stance. So that's pretty common on putting greens. A lot of times, if we have GUR and putting greens, especially around the edges, we'll say that it's only for their swing, or sorry, we'll say it's only for their lie of ball or their swing, and if it's in their stance, they'll just play it. They actually won't get relief in that case, but there has to be a local rule put in place. All right, so we can take relief from these abnormal course conditions anywhere in the course except when it's in a penalty area. So if we're in a penalty area, we're going to use penalty area relief procedures. But we have to have both of these conditions to happen. The abnormal course condition needs to be on the course, so not out of bounds. So if the temporary water is in an area that's out of bounds, the player will not get relief from that if it's in their stance. And then the ball anywhere in the course except in the penalty area. But however, we're not going to give relief for these areas if it's clearly unreasonable for them to play a ball. So this is kind of came over from the older rules. And if you think about like a cart path, for example, if the ball is wedged inside a root and there's no way the player could hit that shot, they're not going to get relief from the cart path. And, or if the player chooses a crazy stance or a direction of play only to basically have interference. And a lot of times in these situations, the common question that we want to ask is, how would you play the shot if the abnormal course condition wasn't there? So if, for example, the player's ball was behind a tree and they're a right-handed player, but they take a left-handed stance and that puts them on the cart path, they're going to ask you for relief. But the question you want to say is that, if the cart path wasn't there, how would you hit that shot? They're not going to hit that shot left-handed if the cart path wasn't there in that case. And most players aren't smart enough to know how to answer those questions. So they're going to tell you what they're actually thinking, and then in that case, you would tell the player, that they're not going to get relief because it's clearly unreasonable for you to hit that shot.
Wasn't that a couple of weeks ago, Tommy? 2 weeks?
Rory and Dustin.
Yeah.
Dustin got relief when
Rory didn't.
Rory didn't.
Yeah.
Talk about that. I didn't catch that.
They were both standing on the cart path. Dustin had a swing to play in the direction he wanted, and the ball was by a tree, but it wasn't wedged in the root, so he could actually swing at it.
Right.
His right foot was on the cart path, so they gave him relief. When they gave him relief, obviously he was away from the tree and it was fine.
Right.
Rory, on the other hand, was around behind the tree, adjacent to the cart path, and he couldn't advance it toward the hole the way he wanted, and he couldn't swing at it because it was in between the root this way. So, yeah.
Right.
You
So
really
he was
gonna play it that way? Yeah.
He ended up playing it left-handed.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But he had no other shot. And the guy says, hey, you couldn't play that ball.
Yeah.
If the cart path wasn't there, you still couldn't play that ball that way because the way it's set behind the tree.
Right.
So we won't give you relief for a path. So
Right.
the spectators, unfamiliar with the rules, decided they were going to raise hell about it, you know. And it was, you know, if you went in there and looked at the Twitter feed, everybody was jumping all over the officials, and they did both of them right.
Right. Right.
You know, it happens.
Definitely does. We think it doesn't come up a lot, but there's always going to be times the ball could be in the middle of a bush or something like that, where it's literally just impossible for the player. I think that happened to Tiger maybe more than a few years ago now, but he was trying to get. I think he was trying to get embedded ball relief.
Yeah, it was in the sand, underneath the shrub, and he took embedded ball relief and didn't get it. Couldn't have it.
Right. And so then again, these are kind of two situations where the player is not going to get relief, even though they do have interference from an abnormal course condition. However, the committee can adopt a local rule allowing free relief from interference from a temporary movable obstruction. So we talked a little bit about those, I think, last week, but basically those are kind of typically what you see on TV. Those are the bleachers, big structures and how the tour handles it is they typically do drop zones. Sometimes where you don't see the drop zone is if you have fans around the green that cool the green. Those usually don't have drop zones, or at least at the events that I've been at, that those have been there, they don't have drop zones a lot of times.
Line of sight relief.
Correct.
Which
Correct.
doesn't happen anywhere else.
Correct. Correct. Well, on the putting green, right?
I'm sorry?
On the putting green, you get well, I guess line of sight. I mean, line of play. It's the same concept, right?
But they actually get line of sight. If you look at their relief, if they can't swing and they're behind a grandstand, when they move back to the point that they can swing behind the grandstand, they pull them out to the side, so the grandstand is not an interference.
Mickelson had to hit one over the grandstand.
So that was his choice, though. He chose.
Yeah.
He didn't have. He could have gotten relief, but he chose to play that.
He chose to play.
Yeah, Spieth got relief at the Open. That's how they did that.
Right.
Well, because except for the tournament, that wouldn't have been there. So it only makes sense that,
Right.
being extra, which we don't have.
Right. So, but it's still, I guess, just for my own clarification. So, but line of sight is still line. It's line of play, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Technically, there's.
I mean, so basically, what you're saying is that in a case where you have both interference from your normal three things and line of sight, then they can take it both at the same time, essentially.
That's what the tour does.
Right.
There's no
Exactly.
line,
Exactly.
There's no line of sight
It's a tour.
for regular rules.
That's only for TIO we're talking.
Yeah,
about.
we're just talking about temporary immovable obstructions, which I mean, we could in theory have, but I don't think there's any in Michigan. Maybe there's.
To us, a temporary movable obstruction is just the trash can. You pull the stake out and move it, right?
Intervention. That's the term.
That's the only thing that we use those benches or something.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I know a lot of times that they have drop zones. Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk about how to take relief from these areas. We'll start in the general area. So if the player's ball is in the general area and there's interference by the abnormal course condition, the player can take May. So a lot of these, the player has the option to play from. So as we know, players' balls and ground under repair, they have the option to play it or they can take relief. It's really up to the player. If they have a really good lie in the fairway and their stance is in ground under repair, they may not want to take relief because they might end up having a worse lie after the fact. So it's really up to the player if they want to take relief in these situations. So our reference point is going to be the nearest point of complete relief, which the definition for that is on 211 in your book. Okay, and then it's the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the ball's original spot, but not near the hole in that spot, and in the required area of the course. So we're talking about general area, in the general area in this case, where the condition does not interfere with the stroke that the player would have made from the original spot if the condition were not there. So the process that we go through is going to be very similar to what we've done before. Estimating the reference point is going to require the player to identify the choice of club, stance, swing, and line of play he or she would have used for that stroke. So that kind of same process is going to be in place. They're going to take the club they're most likely to hit and then take the stance that they're most likely to use, and that's going to determine that nearest point of complete relief. And as we know, if they take relief at that point and then they decide to play a different way or use a different stance or a different club, that's okay.
So this is a case where you don't take the longest club, you take the one
To
you're going to
measure your
use.
relief area.
So to determine, so not to measure, to determine your nearest point of complete relief, you're going to use the club you're most likely to hit. But when you're measuring, you're still going to use your longest club. And technically you can use any club to measure, but your actual relief area that's defined is defined by your club length, which is longest club.
Yeah, but if the player uses a shorter club and stays the relief area and rolls outside of it, if he picks the ball up, he's got a penalty. One for the back, he's got two.
Correct.
Because I don't think players are going to realize that they have that longest club length. But if it rolls outside of that 9-iron length, that's in play.
Correct.
It's in play as long as it's not farther off than.
Right, exactly. Right.
As long as, yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
They see it outside the club, but my concern is they're going to pick it up.
Right. And
Beyond it.
yeah, and I think that's a good thing to bring up is that we probably should encourage if they are measuring out to use their driver, or I guess technically their longest club in the bag should.
Or you could
Except
use
for
3
putter.
tees, one for the reference and one for
Right.
I would say in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. No, Matt, I think if we do see people measuring with something other than driver, we probably do want to be extra careful or just a little bit more observant in that case. And then if we can say it before they actually drop, or if it's from afar after, just go up to them and say, hey, you know that when you're measuring out your club, your club length is defined as your longest club in your bag except your putter. So it'd be a good idea for you to use your driver if you're going to put tees in the ground in that case to avoid that confusion that could come up. Yeah, oh, definitely. I think so for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And here, the player does not need to simulate the stroke by taking an actual stance. So, basically what this is saying is that the player doesn't actually need to get out and do it. If they just have an idea or they can estimate in their mind where this is going to be and then drop in that area, they're good. So I know when I go out and play casually, I'm not taking my stance, putting a tee in the ground. I just know where to drop and I drop. And then if it's not, if it is close, then I'll get out and measure it. But most times I'm not putting tees in the ground, not laying any clubs out. Maybe I do differently if I was playing in a tournament. I don't know, but players are not required to actually get out, take their stance, put the tees in the ground, and measure. It's just recommended. And then the nearest point of relief the nearest point of complete relief relates solely to the particular condition from which relief is being taken, and may be in a location where there's interference by something else. So you might be taking relief from a cart path, and then after you take relief from a cart path, when you take relief from a cart path, you're in an area of temporary water. Sorry, and I keep saying this, and I think we've all seen that video with Spieth a couple of years ago, and I think some of that is not correct anymore because of the way that we're dropping the ball. But if you remember the video, basically he's on the cart path. There's temporary water on the cart path, and so he's basically taking relief from one thing at a time, and then after that he can take relief from another condition, but not the same one. So we have the same kind of procedure there. And then the other thing that I probably should have said this before, but this was one of the term changes or terminology changes. It used to just be nearest point of relief. Now it's complete relief, and where the process is very, very similar, but we're just emphasizing that we are taking complete relief in these scenarios. Okay, this last point here says relief must be taken in the definition. Relief must be taken separately for each condition, except that the player may take relief from both conditions at the same time, based on determining the nearest point of complete relief from both. When already having taken relief separately from each condition, it becomes reasonable to conclude that continuing to do so result in continued interference by one or the other. So basically what this is saying is that after you try it once, you don't need to keep going back and forth. Then you can take relief from both the cart path and the temporary water at the same time. But you do have to try it separate. You can't just go and take relief from both in one shot. Right, Craig?
Yes.
Okay.
If you had temporary water on a cart path, wouldn't the nearest point of relief most likely be the same point for either condition?
Well,
Yes, choose one or the other though.
yeah. So you have to either take relief from the cart path or the temporary water.
I mean, you may want to play the ball with the cart path.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the
That was the speed.
Jordan Spieth situation, was that his relief from the cart path would have put him behind a tree, and the cart path was like loose gravel, so it was very playable. And so what he ended up doing, I think, was taking relief from in his case casual water, in our case temporary water, and played it off the path. But he has to choose one or the other, which he's taking relief from.
But he took relief from one puddle and ended up in another puddle.
Yeah.
Right.
He took relief.
Right, which
So
are
he could-
separate
So
separate
he could take
areas
the
of
drop from
temporary
the
water.
temporary water and put it down and it's behind the tree. He said, I don't like that. I'm gonna play it in the cart path.
That's true, you could.
I think you can do that.
Now, if you move the ball,
You can't pick up, don't pick up the
Well,
ball. until decide
you can
to
do
do
still,
it.
if you've taken relief from the casual water, and then you're still on the cart path and you don't like the lie, then you can determine you want to take relief from the cart path.
right?
But you shouldn't pick up the ball. You keep the ball in
You
the
don't
cart.
have, no, you don't have to keep the ball. Once you've decided to take relief, you don't really have to mark it. It's not required to mark it, but it's a good idea that they leave it there.
Okay.
Leave it there.
But can they just pick it up?
But only if the second one was, an option.
So if they pick it up the cart path and they drop the ball for temporary water, it's behind a tree, they can't go back to the cart path because they weren't pick the ball up.
Walk me through that story.
Okay,
You're
so
saying balls,
the ball's on a cart path in temporary water.
or are they taking relief from?
Okay, I'm gonna take relief from the temporary water, and I pick up the ball.
Okay.
I go to drop the ball from temporary water, and it's behind a tree or in a bush. I said, I don't like that. I'm gonna go back to the cart path. Can I go back?
You can't do that.
No.
Yeah, no. You should take, you-
After you've taken relief.
Well,
So I gotta keep a mark there, keep the ball there.
well, you can even properly from the casual water, temporary water.
right. I
But
think
I
that's
don't like that lie, or I don't like that
You
situation.
need to decide before you take relief,
Well, then
which one you're
then
gonna.
you determine either play it or then you take relief from
But the ball's I can't pick up the ball beforehand. The
you
ball's
can, but then you.
Well, if you've dropped the ball behind the tree,
The
You're in
ball's
play.
The ball's in play if it's not If you
Okay.
remove the condition that you're requesting relief from,
I pick up the ball from the water on the cart path. And I take my nearest point of relief, but I don't drop the ball because I see it's going to be behind a tree or in a bush.
Yeah.
But I've got the ball in my hand. And I say, I don't want that. I'm going to go play it off the cart path.
Yeah.
I
With
can
the
do-
one-stroke
the
penalty.
one-stroke penalty.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, so as long as you don't drop it, and then you know the other thing too is that you have like there's those couple situations where if you don't do it right, then you could go back and change relief, right? So
Don't pick the ball up.
right, exactly. Just yeah, that's why we tell people as Lee said to that don't pick it up until you know where it's going because
And that's what the officials should be counseling them too,
right, correct.
Kyle, there was a great picture in the old decision book that shows that the relief point is not the same always. It could be quite different depending on which one you do first.
right, you got two situations, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be very different. I don't think anything's changed.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope not.
There'll be a new letter of clarification.
All right. So, getting back to this, we now know what nearest point of complete relief is. We're going to determine that reference point, nearest point of complete relief, and then from that point we get one club length. But it needs to be in the general area because our ball's in the general area. It can't be near the hole than that reference point, and we have to have complete relief from all interference by the abnormal course condition. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, and again, that's going to be our relief area. And as we know about dropping, when we drop the ball, it has to hit in that relief area and stay in that relief area in order for it to be good to go. All right, so what happens if our ball's in the bunker? If it's in the bunker and there's interference by an abnormal course condition, then the player can either take free relief or penalty relief. So free relief, the player can do that, but the nearest point of complete relief and the relief area as defined by that one club length needs to be in the bunker. So we might not have a complete one club length in all directions. And so and this is another case where our relief area might not be that perfect half moon shape. But if there's no such nearest point of complete relief in the bunker, the player may still take relief by using the point of maximum available relief in the bunker as the reference point. So let's talk about that really quick. We go to the definitions. I think that's.
Can you take the relief outside if there is no place? He doesn't always have that option.
No, he always has that option.
Yeah, that's what changed.
Yeah.
You changed, what do you mean you changed?
I mean, you used
Where
to
was
not be able to take relief
Well, I
unless
know,
there was
but
no
the
other
way-
option.
But the way this
Out
says,
of
it
it.
says, if there is no such nearest point of relief in the bunker, the player may take his, the maximum available, okay.
Yeah, so the first part here, we're just talking about the free relief, and then so if it's on page 215, the definition, point of maximum available relief, and so again, this is where there's no nearest point of complete relief, where we don't have complete relief from the condition that we're taking it from, and this point of maximum available relief is going to be nearest to the ball's original spot, but not near the hole, in the required area of the course. So in this case here, in our example, the bunker. And then where that abnormal course condition least interferes with the stroke the player would have made from the original spot if the condition were not there. And then we go through this basically. We go through the same process to identify what that point is. And the key point here is the last couple sections. The point of maximum available relief is found by comparing the relative amount of interference with the lie of the ball and the player's area of intended stance and swing. And on the putting green only, the line of play. So the point of maximum available relief may be where the player where the ball will be in the shallower water than where the player will stand, affecting the stance more than the lie and the swing, or where the ball is in deeper water than where the player's stance will be. And then on the putting green, the point of maximum available relief may be based on the line of play, where as opposed to the stance per se. So every situation is going to be a little bit unique, but kind of the way that I like to think about it is that, let's just say, for example, if you're in a greenside bunker, your lie is probably a lot more important than your stance, because if you stand in some water, it doesn't matter. You want to have a good lie because you want to have good contact and hit it close. But you might be in a fairway bunker and you're punching out sideways, and at that point, you're on a crazy lie. You'd rather have good footing in that case, and the ball, if it's in deeper water or whatever, I'm just punching out. So it's going to be different in every case, and I don't know if there's a tried and true way to determine what this point is, other than just getting with the player and figuring out what they would do, or how they would play that shot if that condition wasn't there.
So my question is, say you have a large area on a hole that has temporary water, and it's not like, I'm not talking like a giant pond, I'm talking like you're bringing up water with your feet, which you can take relief from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide to take relief, you're supposed to find complete relief from that. Can you choose not to find complete relief and take this maximum temporary relief?
No, it's only if it's a,
like how big does the area have to be that that you can't take complete
right.
relief?
Yeah, I mean, I think in
it's more bunker.
Temporary water case, I don't think you'd really have.
Eventually, you should be able to
exactly.
find somewhere that's drier.
Right.
You shouldn't be playing.
Right, right. Well, and obviously, in that case, it may be. I mean, if your nearest point of complete relief is 30 yards away, the player may just decide to hit it out where it was,
right.
Because it might be better off in that case.
Right.
But yeah, I think really the bunker is where you're going to be the most constrained.
Okay.
With that.
Because otherwise you'd have to take a penalty. So they're saying that you can take not complete relief so that you can not take a penalty in an area where you can get some relief.
Correct. Okay. But now, and I believe this is new, the player can take penalty relief for one stroke, using the back on a line relief option. The player may drop the original ball or another ball in a relief area that is based on the reference line going straight back from the hole through the spot of the original ball. So let's we'll go through this. I got the picture. The picture's in the book as well. It's a really good illustration. But the reference point is the point on the course chosen by the player that is on the reference line is farther from the hole than that original spot, with no limit on how far back on that line. And the player should indicate the point by using an object such as a tee. They're not required to. If they don't choose a spot, then that reference point is going to be where it first hits the ground, but that's going to define the reference point in that case. They don't put a tee or define it using some object. Okay, and then from that reference point, we've got one club length to take relief, just like we do when we're taking nearest point of complete relief.
Really, it's just stroke and distance. You always had that option. Oh, but stroke and distance, you had to go back.
You had to go back to your last play.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that the change here was that this option was in play only if you couldn't find
anything else.
A place.
Yeah,
correct.
That's not new for the one-stroke penalty to go out.
Yeah.
Well, relief, totally, but the size of relief area has changed at all.
Well, but I think in this case you can take it out of the bunker completely.
But that's not one stroke. But that's not new though. That was new.
Yeah, but you had to not be able to take relief anywhere in the bunker before you could take it out before. Now you can decide to take it out no matter what.
You can take it out before you
Yeah, because like I said, it was just an unplayable,
But
right?
you had to go all the way
But you have to
back.
go all the way back to the original spot.
Right.
What's new is you don't have to go back to the original
It's
spot.
not new. It's not new.
No.
We could do that last year.
We always.
But
You always
only
take it
if
out
there
with
was no
one-
relief in the
No.
bunker.
No.
Right. Okay.
No.
Right.
We always had that choice. It's like an obstruction.
Right.
That it was new last year.
Yeah, so that's my confusion, not new. Everything that you know continues on with this. The player can, if they want, take it out of the bunker, and then again on a line where that ball. Here's the picture. It's really a great illustration. But again, we've got the balls in some temporary water here, and we can either take relief inside the bunker without penalty, or we can go back on a line with the flag where the ball was as far back as we want.
I just joined you guys.
Yes, we can hear you.
Who's barking?
I'm not barking.
All right, Robert, this is your warning. If we get more background noise, we're going to mute you. Okay.
So, Carl, where did collegiality go? Huh?
It's a new year, new rules, new year, new Kyle.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, I go with new month.
Yeah, new month. Okay, so but anyways, this is a good illustration here. If we want to go back, and go out of the bunker, we can, but it's a one-stroke penalty if we do that.
Like shelters? Oh, yeah.
Is not on the line. It's the
Yeah,
both sides.
Exactly. And kind of that same, whenever we go back on a line back, it's going to be one club length on either side of that line. And so that's a change universally across the board. Yeah. No, so those are both still part of the same area. So basically, it couldn't go from the fairway to the area or bunker. Right.
So but you can only do that if there's something in the bunker you're taking relief from. If it's just a plain bunker and you just want to do that, you have to take stroke distance, right?
Well, we'll get to that next week probably, but you could take an unplayable two-stroke penalty, which is new this year, out of the bunker completely.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so we're done with the bunker. Now we're going to move to the putting green here. So if it's on the putting green, then we're going to be able to, or we're going to place the ball. Okay, so we're not going to drop it. And then again, in this case here, we are getting relief from line of play if the ball is on the putting green. Okay, and then same situation, if there is no such nearest point of complete relief, the player may still take this free relief by using the point of maximum available relief, which could be either on the putting green or in the general area. So, let's say for example, there's a moat around the hole, and the player in that case, they're not going to get complete relief, so they're just going to go to the point where the water is the shallowest and then putt through that. Would be an example. I don't think we'd ever have a complete moat around the hole and still have play going on, but that's kind of the concept, so to speak, is that if there's going to be interference everywhere they go, the player can choose the shallowest point or where they have the maximum available relief. All right, so what happens if the ball is not found, but we know it's in an abnormal course condition? So if the player has not been found, but it's known or virtually certain that the player's ball came to rest in an abnormal course condition, so you've got a bunker that's 3 feet full of water, and you saw the splash go in there, but you can't see the ball, and the player doesn't want to go in there to try to grab it out because it's a pinnacle or whatever, and they don't care about it. So in that case, we know that it's there. Huh? Do you? Sorry.
Do all the balls I had access to them.
You use the ones with stripes on them?
New Callaway.
It's a ball that didn't cost you $3.
So in this case, the player can take relief under B, C, or D. using the estimated point where the ball last crossed the edge of the abnormal course condition on the course as a spot for the purpose of finding the nearest point of release. So I think we've got a picture here on this one too. Maybe not. Is there a picture in the book on this one?
E, but I don't see one for E.
No, that's too bad. Well, let's just go back to this picture here. I mean, let's just say, for example, that this was a 3-foot sinkhole or something like that in the middle of the bunker. I don't know. And the ball, we saw the ball go in there. In that case, we would go where it last crossed. So we, if people could see, kind of right wherever it's the edge is right here, that would be our point where we're then going to determine our nearest point of complete relief. So at that point, we would take our stance and then get relief and then put a T, and then that would be our reference point in that case. So right-handed golfer, if it was here, you know, their nearest point of complete relief would probably be maybe here or right here. It just kind of depends, but it'd be somewhere in this area, and then they get 1 club length in that direction. If they stayed in the bunker, they get that free relief. And then, however, does the player still have the option to take it out of the bunker? Yes or no? Yes. Right? In that case, with the penalty? Yeah. Okay. All right, and then basically the same options that the player has if they did find the ball would be in play here if they have virtual certainty. But if they don't have virtual certainty, then they're going to have to go back under stroke and distance. So you know, we have to have that known or virtual certainty. So there could be other situations too. I mean, it could be a ball that goes into a pipe or something like that, or a drainage ditch, and we saw it go in there, or player hits the ball down the middle of the fairway and it just magically isn't there, and it's dry as, you know, can be out in the golf course. There really is nowhere else the ball could be. And if there's a big manhole in the fairway and the ball happened to go through one of those, I mean, that would be another scenario that you could use this. Yeah, and then this part that I skipped over just says that basically if we do take relief with known or virtual certainty, and we take the proper relief procedure, and then we find our ball, it doesn't matter. We've taken relief properly, and then we're going to continue to play, and that original ball is out of play and can't be played.
So Kyle, if say a bunker is full of water, there's no place to even take maximum relief, it's still a penalty stroke to take it out?
If it's not marked.
So if the bunkers were really bad, local rules, they would probably make that it was free relief from the bunker.
Yeah, we would declare those bunkers as ground under repair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, Marvin, you've probably done a million times, but just when you're out there, if you see puddling in the backs of bunkers, it's something to always be careful of, because we don't really want to have players to take that 1-stroke penalty. We want them to be able to play from the bunker. If the entire backside of a bunker is out of play.
Some bunkers like I have, of course, I do in Ohio. They have bees in this one bunker.
Mm-hmm.
And we make it so the players able to take free relief outside the bunker.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna get to that too in a sec. Dangerous animal condition.
Did that
All right, but what happens if there's interference from a no play zone?
God, that was a long day.
What event? Sorry.
We had bees at Mid-Am last year at Barton Hills. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
2 years ago, 3 years.
Yeah. Where we had to determine where the player could go play from. He wasn't real happy because he had to drop further back into the bunker.
Were they dangerous to him or just to you?
He thought they were dangerous to him, so I'm not going to question his judgment on that. So he carries an EpiPen. He knows he got a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So when the ball is in a no play zone, then and it's an abnormal course condition. Sorry, let's see here. The player's ball is in a no-play zone in or on an abnormal course condition in the general area in a bunker of the putting green. So in the general area, the player must take free relief under Rule 16.1b. If the no-play zone is in the bunker, the player must take free relief or penalty relief. And then if the no-play zone is on the putting green, the player must take free relief. So we probably most of the no-play zones will be either in the probably mostly in the general area of flower beds, but I guess you could have a bunker, an entire bunker possibly be a no-play zone, or I guess maybe certain spots in the putting green.
You still have the environmentally sensitive areas that they're going to call no-play zones.
Right. Correct. Okay, so that's the first one we talked about when the ball was in that no-play zone. What happens if the no-play zone interferes with your stance or your swing? Anywhere in the court except in a penalty area. If the player's ball is outside of no-play zone and is in the general area, in a bunker on the putting green in no-play zone, whether in an abnormal course condition or in a penalty area, interferes with the player's area of stance or swing, the player must either take relief or take an unplayable. And then, so I guess in this case here, so basically I'm trying to think of a situation where this would come up.
The ball is outside the flower bed, but you're gonna hit the flowers on your backswing.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Right. And so basically what it's saying is that you would just take your nearest point of complete relief where you wouldn't hit the flowers.
Yep.
And then play from there.
Mhm.
Now, why does it say unplayable? Yeah, I'm just a little. I guess it's just something that you can do.
Yes,
At that, it's just another option that they put in there to cover their bases.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Why you want to take a penalty when you could get free relief?
Yeah, free relief.
The others are all free, and then that's penalty.
Right.
I don't want a free one.
Unless it was worse than the take line of play.
Right. Possibly. Yeah.
Some distance.
Mhm.
Good job.
Right. All right, and then we're going to talk about when there's interference with the no-play zone for a ball that's in the penalty area, which you've already talked about previously as well. All right, dangerous animal conditions. So we were just talking about bees, and to clarify too, we need to remember the definition of an animal. So crazy Craig, if he's coming up and he's intimidated, he's not a dangerous animal condition, although he can be intimidating.
And we can't shoot him.
And so a dangerous animal condition exists when a dangerous animal, such as a poisonous snake, stinging bees, alligators, fire ants, or bears, near a ball could cause serious physical injury to the player if he or she had to play the ball as it lies. So apparently, if it's just regular snakes, they're not dangerous. I guess I don't know. I mean, you have to have.
You have to put a size on that.
Specialist to know if it's poisonous. Oh, garden snake.
Is
not
there a
poisonous.
size limitation on that snake? Is there a size limitation to it?
That big, yeah. For that long.
Yeah.
One time was on a green, I think it was at the Meadows or something, but there was a giant wolf spider on the green, and it actually stood up and hissed at me.
Oh.
So I smashed it with my putter. I was probably.
Right.
Now it's not a live animal, now it's dead. Yeah.
Now it's loose.
Now it's so sportsmanlike.
Yeah. So and then this begs the question too, and I think it comes up later, is that what you're saying. I mean, what's dangerous to me might not be dangerous to someone else. I mean, the crocodile guy, Steve Irwin or whatever. I mean, he'd probably like to play with the gator right next to him, but not me. So it's very interesting because it's I don't know. I mean, maybe it's always been that way. It's always been open to interpretation. But I guess if a player was smart, they just be really really scared, so they get a little bit farther away.
Yeah.
In that
Taking
case.
4 and moving on to
So you just got to know all those like phobias. You just got to have all those memorized and say, oh, I'm a X phobia or whatever. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, however, we're not going to get relief in kind of the same situation we talked about before when it's clearly unreasonable to play because of something other than a dangerous animal condition. Okay, so if the ball was in the bush and we weren't able to play, even if there wasn't that snake there, those bees, stinging bees there, I guess just regular bees are okay too. Not necessarily dangerous, I guess. But.
Kyle, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
How do you take relief in a dangerous animal condition?
Yeah, so
let's say the ball's right next to the alligator. First of all, I wouldn't go get the ball.
Right.
You're playing tentacles.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get to that here in a sec, Doug. But,
okay.
Yep. And then again, same thing. If you're dumb enough to take a crazy stance to get close to that alligator, good for you. But you're in that case, you wouldn't get relief from a dangerous condition if you're taking an abnormal stance. I guess that's the wrong terminology. That's old stuff. An unreasonable stance or club selection or direction of play. So everywhere except in a penalty area, the player is gonna take relief just like we would from taking relief from an abnormal course condition. But how are we going to define where that reference point is? And we'll get to that here in a sec. If it's in the penalty area, then we have to stay for we can get free relief, but has to stay inside the penalty area. And then if we're going to take it, if the ball is in the penalty area and we take it outside, then the player is going to get a penalty in that case. All right, so what is our nearest point of complete relief? So this is important here. So it is the nearest point, not near the hole, where the dangerous animal condition does not exist. So what that means for me versus what that means for Lynn might be completely different, but that's going to define that reference point. And then from that reference point, we're going to take the same procedure that we would from normal ground at normal abnormal course conditions. So the one club length, and then no closer to the hole from that point. And going back to this is that again, if it's anywhere but a penalty area, it's going to be free. But if it isn't a penalty area, it needs to stay in the penalty area. So an example that I have from tournaments that I worked in the past when I was down in South Carolina, had a player, her ball was inside the hazard penalty area now, and it was sitting up fairly nice, but there were a bunch of baby gators in the pond, and mama gator was snout out about 3 feet from the ball. And so that player, she was definitely not gonna play the ball, and she definitely wasn't going to drop the ball back in the hazard and find what's the safest point in this pond or whatever. So she ended up just taking it out, and me not knowing the rules at that point, just gave it to her for free. So yeah, exactly.
Good man.
So that's
Nice guy.
exactly. So that's how you learn.
Kyle, in the big book, it talks about even if they're allergic, if it's poison ivy or those cactus, that fire at you, that's not a free relief, right?
It's not a dangerous animal. That's a botanical.
Suck it up and play it, huh?
Is the bee's nest in the bunker? Is taking it in the nearby civil bunker going?
That's what Marv just said. Yeah. So I think that's gone. Yes.
Yeah, that's gone.
But you still have the option of taking it out of the bunker for the penalty.
Correct.
What page you got that?
235.
235.
Hey, Kyle.
Can you then
Hold-
your relief?
Hold on one second, Robert.
Some attorney doesn't know the difference between them.
I don't like the way it ends up. So you have to go back to the original play. I'll get over it.
Yeah,
Right across is still the same.
right. I think in that case, you would, I don't know for sure. That's a good question. Craig, I don't know if you know the answer to that question, but the question was, if I'm taking relief from a dangerous animal condition in the penalty
That's a
area,
dangerous course.
and hey guys, can we focus on this because it's hard for other people to hear. So the question was, if I'm taking relief from a dangerous animal condition and I drop the ball in the penalty area, at that point, if I don't like it, can I take relief?
You're still entitled to take relief from that. You feel like you're alive. So almost like a
So I go back to like swing it across.
Swing across.
Let's say that 2 club lengths gives, I'm still in danger of the dangerous animal. Then I get all my other relief options.
Right, in the general area, you find out, yeah.
Robert, what was your question?
My question is, when you are in the penalty area, I understand all of that, but you could also have a dangerous animal in the fairway. Is there a different way to handle that?
So it's just in that point 1 there. So basically, we're just going to find the point that where it's no longer dangerous, and then they're going to take their nearest point of complete relief from that point. So if you have, it could be just trying to think of an example. I mean, maybe it's just a bee's nest that fell underneath a tree, and your ball is right there. You would just go to the point where the bees aren't interfering anymore, or where it's safe, and then take 1 club length from there, and then that would be your relief area.
Okay. Thanks.
Kyle, I have a question too.
Take 2 strokes and move on.
If you walk up that
Hold on
way,
one
it'll
second,
be
Mike. We'll
closer
get to
to
your
right
question.
away.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that case, you'd probably you'd probably try to get it to move somehow, but I don't know.
They usually don't like it.
Right, exactly.
All you gotta do
Your
is outrun
opponent.
one guy.
Yeah, you don't want your partner to go up.
Kyle?
No, yeah. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Mike.
What about the identification of the ball if you can't get close to it? Do you use the virtually certain aspect, and you can substitute, I assume, if you can't get near your ball?
That's an
I
official's
think-
decision.
I think you still need to identify the ball. I don't think you can. I mean, yeah. So I think in that case, let's what you do is if you had like a rangefinder, you use that to try to see it. But I think you still need to identify your ball. But I mean, I guess if no one was brave enough to find out if it was yours or not, you'd be good to go.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
you need virtual certainty. I mean, what was the premise of the question?
The
For a
question
dangerous
was,
condition?
yeah. So let's say that you can't get close enough to identify if it's your ball or not.
Well, it's virtually certain your ball, you'd still be able to. I would think that would.
Is it virtually certain? I mean, if you're in a
It's just like virtually certain. You're in a water hazard.
Right. Well, but I mean, I think Mike's. I mean, maybe Mike's question was, what happens if it's there's a small pond, there's trees, there's tall grass, and you're not virtually certain. It's your ball, right?
I'm just thinking like a swampy area or something in like a penalty area, and you start wading through there. You know that your ball's there, and you saw where it went in right there, and 3 feet away is the alligator, and you can't get close to your ball, but you're virtually certain that your ball's in that small little area.
Yeah, you'd be good then to do that, but I guess the point then is that then you'd still have your options where you could take free relief in the part of that penalty area that's safe, or go outside for a 1 stroke.
Correct, but you can substitute the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Correct. Yes.
You take
Yeah.
under room and substitute.
Or you let your opponent prove it's not yours.
Instead, all you gotta do is outrun one guy.
There's always that. There's always That's what he's saying.
All right.
Over the 15-foot gate.
All right, so let's move on to embedded balls. This happens quite a bit more in Michigan during the spring than those dangerous animal conditions. All right, so when is relief allowed? The ball must be embedded in the general area. Okay, so basically that rules out the penalty areas, bunkers, or putting green, or the teen area. Okay, and then there's no relief under this rule if it's embedded anywhere in those areas that I just mentioned. However, if the ball is embedded on the putting green, the player can mark the ball, fix the ball mark, or whatever you want to call it, and then place the ball back on the spot. So the player is still technically getting relief on the putting green, but they're not taking embedded ball relief like we're going to talk about. They're just marking their ball, fixing it, putting it back where it was on that fixed turf.
So basically, they took the old embedded ball rule and the rule allowed penalties to combine.
Correct. Yeah, they got those couple situations and got them here so that people could see, and you don't have to go and find appendix, whatever.
Yeah.
Page 500 and something there. And what Tom is talking about now is that previously these next two situations were in the appendix. Now they're actually in the rule. So the player is not going to get relief from an embedded ball in the general area if the ball is embedded in sand and part of the general area that's not cut to fairway height or less. So that might be a typo. Basically, a good example would be if there's a waste area or something like that that's not a bunker but it's a sandy area. If the ball is embedded in that, the player is not going to get embedded ball relief.
Compared to the same.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But it's got to come in and fly. Can't
Right.
I couldn't hear what he said.
happens.
So the comment was that would also that could also include a divot that was filled with sand as well. So are you saying that that they would not get relief from that?
No, they do. That's but it's always been like that. It used to be that in a closely known area they get relief, otherwise they don't. For sand. But now.
Oh, okay, that's not cut to fairway height.
It's
Okay.
it's got to be fairway height. Can't be rough.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying is that if I filled my divot in the rough, then they would not get relief from that. But if it's in the fairway, I would.
It was always that way, even in the appendix.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if your ball is in a divot that's been repaired with sand and it's below the surface, you can get relief from that.
If it's in a closely known area.
Fairway.
It's in fairway cut or less.
It has to be your mark, though, right?
You have to be your pitch mark. Can't just roll up into it.
What do you know?
Good question.
That's always the problem I had is that, did it roll into, you got a whole bunch of pitch marks and ball's in one of them. Now, did it, and, maybe I sculled it up there and, it wasn't coming in on a trajectory that was likely to embed going straight down. But the ball's in a obvious hole in the ground.
You see it bounce once, it's not embedded.
It has to be known adversity. I just saw a tour event a couple of years ago where the official asked the spectators, "Did you see where the ball ended?"
Did it roll into it, or did it come in on the
He
fly?
didn't get relief because there was a number of other pitch marks in the area. Players as well.
Hmm.
Number one at Plumhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot.
Well, it's the same thing over at one at Salem Hills. You go off to that right there by that trap there, and I mean they plug in there and
Save. one there, at least the Plum Hollow, it's in the fairway. It just can't be seen from where you're taking your shot.
So
Kyle,
you're gonna get relief from that or not? You know, if especially if you didn't see it go. No, the answer is no.
Well, if you get there and that's the only pitch mark.
Yeah. But if there's 6, yeah,
But if there's several.
Yeah. then the answer is no.
Yeah, Lee, go ahead.
I didn't understand the discussion about, was Marv saying, or someone saying that if your ball is embedded in a sand-filled divot, you would get relief?
In a closely known area.
In a closely mown area.
Why? Under what?
It's considered ground.
It's I
like that
I don't know because the rules say so.
Where
I don't know.
I thought it says you don't get relief from a ball embedded in sand.
Not in the closely known area.
That's not cut to fairway height or less is what it says under the exception. I thought I typed it wrong when I read it first too, because it doesn't make any sense to me either.
Well, then you're saying in a waste area, is embedded in a waste area, you get relief there too.
That's not cut to fairway height.
No, because that's not cut to fairway height.
It would still have to be embedded in the sand. It wouldn't just be sitting in a divot that was filled with sand. Right? It would still have to be.
It was still to be embedded. Yeah, it couldn't just roll up there.
Right.
Right. So does that make it, that's what we're saying, right? Is that if it bounces a couple times, it rolls in there, then yeah, it's got to be embedded.
After a stroke, it got airborne and then embedded.
Right.
Down on a trajectory and
right.
didn't come out.
I think, Lee, does that clear it up a little bit? So if it just rolled there, you wouldn't get relief, but only if it's embedded or bounced.
Well, I understand that or understood that, but I guess I'm still struggling with the rest of it. But
well, because USG considers that sand repaired filled divot as being ground. Same as the dirt.
So it's not a divot anymore.
All right, thank you.
I think, well, I guess it's probably happening more, but a lot of times, especially in northern climates, they encourage you to fix divots as opposed to fill them with sand. But definitely down south, fixing your divots does absolutely nothing because the roots are so small or so shallow or whatever. Huh?
You probably never go to see it. I've never seen it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I know people that have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kyle, I posed a question on chat. Did you pick that up, Joe?
I didn't see it. Let me see, Joe. Ornamental grasses. So you're talking like the ones with like the palmetto bushes and stuff like that?
These are those ornamental grasses that grow 3 or 4 feet high eventually, as the weather warms. Right now they're cut back to maybe 1 foot, 2 feet at the most height, but it's all white sand along the edge of the fairway, around some of the palm trees. But they are sandy areas.
Right.
So if you're embedded in there, that's no relief?
Correct, yes. So Joe's questions, I'm sure not many people can see it. So it's not very.
Neither can you.
Yeah, I can't see it either. Basically, he said on courses in Hilton Head, there are a number of areas in the course that are sandy and planted with ornamental grasses. And it is, if the ball's embedded in those areas, would the player get relief? And no, it's not, because those are sandy areas that aren't cut to fairway height or less. And Joe, when I worked down in that area, there were multiple times where the players would not get relief in those situations, and they'd be very, very angry.
Did you get it too, right?
No, I didn't. On those, I learned that one. I didn't learn the other one. You know, I was just as scared as the alligator as that girl was. So. but yeah, it does happen quite a bit. I mean, I'd say that I probably had done that 5 or 6 times when I was down there, not getting players relief from those types of areas. All right. Let's see. Okay, so what is our first we have to determine whether the ball is embedded or not. So instead of reading through all this, we're just going to show you the picture because the picture is really good. We've looked at this before. And again, it's just as long as part of the ball is below the level of the ground. Okay, so we got situation 1. That ball is embedded because it's below the level of the ground. Situation 2, same. Even though it's not touching the dirt, it's below the level of the ground. But the third situation, the ball is just in some tall grass and it's not below the level of the ground, so that ball is not embedded.
You know, Kyle, one of the things about that second point is you really can't tell if the ball rolled into it or not.
Right. I mean, so you would have to look at some other factors to see if you know how that ball got there. You know, there was talk about, well, the shot trajectory, was it a high shot or was it a low screamer? I mean, chances are if it was a low screamer, yeah, probably not going to actually be embedded there. But if it was a high shot and you heard a big thud when it hit the ground, and there's casual or temporary water everywhere on the course, chances are it probably is embedded. So you'd look at those kind of situations when you're trying to determine if it's embedded or not, as well, in its own pitch mark. And then a couple of things too, a couple of examples where it's not embedded would be if the ball is pushed into the ground by someone stepping on it, or maybe by a cart running it over. The ball is driven straight into the ground without becoming airborne. So a lot of times the player will be in the lip of a bunker or in the lip of something, and they'll just hit it, and the ball will just go further into the grass or the dirt. That ball is not embedded there. Or if the ball was dropped. So if I dropped the ball and it was so wet that my ball plugged or was embedded at that would not be an embedded ball in that case.
That's a change. That is a change.
Is it?
If you dropped it and embedded it, it embedded.
Okay.
There you go.
That's
Kyle?
yes.
If your ball is embedded, you take it out and clean it. Can you fix the embedded hole before you drop the ball?
So Jeff, that's a good question. The question was if it's embedded and you pick it up and you clean it. Yes, you can clean it, but can you fix that hole? It's usually recommended to do it after. There could be a situation where you could do it before, but it's really going to depend on if it's going to improve your next shot. So if we look at the relief area, which has changed a little bit, we get to the picture. This might better help to answer your question. But basically here, previously we told the players they had to drop the ball right in that hole or as close to the hole as possible, and every single player didn't listen to us and said, I'm not dropping it anywhere near that thing because I don't want that in my way. But they all tried to. But so now the player just has that point, one club length in either direction in which to drop. So if the player's ball ended up here on the far left far left side, and this mark was here, if you were hitting a 200-yard shot and this was a club length away, you probably could fix it and not be penalized in that case. But if your ball was, right here, or if your ball was right here and you were standing on it, then you wouldn't be able to fix it because that would be improving your stance, your swing, or your lie of your ball. So it really just depends on where it ends up, but it's a good rule of thumb to just tell them to wait until after they're done, because I think 2 years ago there was a player that missed out on qualifying for the U.S. Open because he fixed his pitch mark.
Thank you.
Yep. Again, just like we saw in that picture, our reference point again is a spot right behind where the ball is embedded, and then the size of the relief area is going to be 1 club length in either direction, no closer to the hole, and in that general area. Okay. Sorry. Then the committee. So one of the changes to the rules too is that previously we had to put a local rule in play to say that the embedded ball rule is in effect through the green, or now the general area. Now that's just a rule of golf. It's in effect through the general area, or in the general area, but the committee can say that we're only going to do it in closely mown areas or something like that.
Is that happening? Are they playing the tour that way?
What's that?
No.
Embedded ball? It's embedded ball through the green anywhere. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think it
The
most
general area, that's what it's. That's
Yeah, the general area.
right.
Okay.
I think it's much more prominent overseas.
Yeah.
I think to have it that way, or because I think that was one of the things that they did a lot differently than us, was how they played that. All right, so lifting the ball to see if it's in a condition where relief is allowed. So the player reasonably believes that his or her ball lies in a condition where free relief is allowed, so embedded ball or abnormal ground condition, but cannot decide without lifting their ball. The player can lift the ball to see if it's allowed. So this is what we think possibly happened with J.B. Holmes a few weeks ago. But the spot of the ball must first be marked, and the lifted ball must not be cleaned except on the putting green, where you can clean it without restriction. If the player lifts it without having a reasonable belief, and they just want to get their ball in their hand, or they want to line up the Titleist arrow a certain way, then they're going to get a 1-stroke penalty. If relief ends up being allowed and the player takes relief, there is no penalty even if the player did not mark the spot of the ball before lifting it or cleaned the lifted ball. So when I read this, I immediately thought about our discussion we had about J.B. Holmes, and maybe what happened. I don't know if he did mark it to identify if it was embedded. Maybe he just literally picked it up, and because he ended up taking relief, it wasn't subject to penalty. And maybe there was nothing in between commercials that happened that they did it. Maybe he just picked it up. But in this case, because he took relief, he'd be okay. All right, but if a relief is not allowed, or if the player chooses not to take relief, then the player gets that 1-stroke penalty if they didn't mark it before lifting it, or cleaned it when they weren't allowed. And then this last part in there just talks about the 2 + 1 = 2. And if we do have a situation where a result or multiple rule breaches happen because of a single act or related acts. All right, any questions about Rule 16 before we move on to penalty areas? All right, so a penalty area, the purpose statement here. So Rule 17 is a specific rule for penalty areas, which are bodies of water or other areas defined by the committee, which is a little bit new, where a ball is often lost or unable to be played. For 1 penalty stroke, players may use specific relief options to play a ball from outside the penalty area. Okay, so what is a penalty area? What has always been a quote-unquote water hazard? This is taking over for water hazards, excuse me. The first part of the definition has always been a water hazard. It's any body of water, whether or not marked by the committee. So if we forget to mark a river or a ditch or something like that out there, it's still a hazard even if we didn't mark it. It could include a sea, a pond, whatever. All these open water course areas, even if they don't contain water, are technically penalty areas. And then any other part of the course the committee defines as penalty areas. Okay, so these other types of new areas that we can now define as penalty areas can be things like jungles, deserts, wooded areas. So we'll see a lot of that in northern Michigan.
It's already been marked that way.
Right, exactly,
It just
exactly.
wasn't legal.
Exactly, exactly. It wasn't by the book, but everyone still did it anyways.
Basically,
Exactly, exactly. Case of play. Yeah. And other things you'll see, heather, tall heather. I mean, pretty much every time that I'd go to a high school rules clinic, I would tell them that that these tall grassy areas weren't hazards, and then all the coaches would come back and say, well, actually, we have a local rule that so pretty much every high school event, I think, usually plays those as water hazards or now as penalty areas, and just to pick up pace. And so now they can do it by the rules, and that's one of the main reasons why the USGA and RNA made the changes to allow more people to play by the rules. Technically, little do they know that they're just probably going to drop incorrectly or go to the middle of the fairway and play from there. But good intentions, I guess. So we still have the red and yellow stakes; those aren't going away. But one thing that they are doing is they're not going to call them lateral penalty areas and just penalty areas. It's going to be red and yellow penalty areas. So we're going to use the actual colors to define what we're talking about here. And again, just to make it easier and clearer for people. If they are yellow, we're going to use yellow lines and yellow stakes, obviously. And the player is going to have 2 relief options for penalty. If it's red, use red. And then we have 2 as well as a lateral relief option or a 2 club length option. If there are no stakes or the stakes don't have a color, I guess, they would be defined as red. So a lot of times we go to courses, probably not for our events, well, definitely not for our events, but for other events or just when you're out playing, the course might not have it staked. They may not have lines. But if an area is a penalty area, in that case, they're always going to be treated as red. If there's no color, it's deemed to be red.
Okay, so say you have a body of water that comes around, partly in front of the green, which would normally be a yellow penalty area, but it's not marked, and somebody hits it over and it bounces back in. So if they can find a place that's no closer to the hole to drop, they can hit it over there instead of coming back.
If it wasn't marked or identified as yellow,
right.
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the edge of the penalty area extends both above the ground and down below the ground. And this means that all ground and anything else, such as any natural artificial object inside the edge, is part of the penalty area, whether on, above, or below the surface of the ground. So it could be a bridge or something like that. That's a common example of something that would be in the penalty area. If an object is both inside and outside the edge, such as a bridge over the penalty area or a tree rooted inside the edge with branches extending outside, only part of the object that is inside the edge is part of the penalty area. Okay, and then the other, so penalty areas, we can define them 3 ways now. We've always been able to define them 2 ways, and we're adding a third way to be able to define them. So we can use stakes and lines like we have been able to for years. If we use stakes, it's just the inside edge or the closest edge to the course. From that stake to the next stake defines that imaginary line. And then the lines, obviously the lines define it. If the ball is touching the line, it's in the penalty area. But the significance of that is really not as important now, because we now can ground our club or remove loose impediments in penalty areas, which we previously have not been able to, but it could make a difference if you're taking relief from something or not getting relief from something if your ball is in a penalty area. And then the newest way we can define them is with using physical features. So it's now okay for rules committees to say the tall grassy areas on holes 5, 9, 13, 18 are defined as penalty areas. It'd be better if they were a little bit more concrete in terms of how it is, maybe where the short grass stops and the tall grass starts. But another common example, maybe not necessarily what we'll see, but is desert area, where the committees can say where the grass stops and the sand starts, that defines the penalty area. We'll stick to using lines for sure. I mean, there could be a very, very unique situation where we'd use physical features, but 99 times out of 100, we're going to be using lines.
That paragraph right above the last one there. So does that mean if there's a line trumps stakes? Is that kind of what it's trying to say there?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So basically, what it's saying is that if you, a lot of times we'll put stakes out to just alert the players that hey, it's here, and it's just
They follow the contour. Of the
exactly
line,
follow the line.
Desert or
Right.
whatever.
Right. Exactly. It's just really to identify it, to say it's there. All right. Now, if the committee doesn't define the body of water, so in this case, we're talking about a body of water, not necessarily a penalty area, which is part of a penalty area, but we're talking about a body of water. The edge of that penalty area is defined by its natural boundaries. That is where the ground slopes down to form the depression that can hold water. So if someone's out playing and they're not sure if this part is in the hazard or not because it's not marked, there's no stakes, they didn't do anything. It's just where that natural depression is or where that natural boundary is. But this is only for the bodies of water. Some of the areas that we talked about, additional areas that are penalty areas, that would not be the case. Because the committee has to identify those.
Yeah, the wooded area
Correct.
isn't marked.
Correct. Okay, and then if an open water course usually does not contain water, such as a drainage ditch or runoff, that it's dry during pretty much every time of the year except for a rainy season, the committee may define that area as part of the general area, which means it's not a penalty area.
It has to be by local.
I think it is. I think they just have to alert that it's not a, but they'd have to put that on the notice to competitors or something like that. Correct. Yeah.
Water course.
Yeah, and I guess one of the maybe I don't know if any examples, but there are some like ditches I think at Detroit Golf Club, or at least ones that I like thought, well, technically these could be water hazard, but it would make no sense to play them as when I marked it last year.
First hole of Edgewood.
I know. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Mm-hmm. Yep. So situations like those, the committee can just make sure that those are not, that define those as the general area and not a penalty area. And really, one of the issues or the reasons that I, at least from my personal experience, was hesitant to mark those areas as penalty areas in the past was that players couldn't remove loose impediments, or if they went in there and they touched a leaf, they got a 2-stroke penalty. Now that's not the case, so it probably in those kind of half and half situations, it might just be easier just to mark them as penalty areas because players aren't going to be subject to those restrictions anymore.
I think like look at 2 places in Edgewood. If you don't mark them, they're just in the general area. It would be an obstruction. If you didn't have an open one, right?
I think it would be the opposite. I mean, the way that I read it, it'd be if it's a ditch and we don't mark it, it's still a penalty area, but we can make it not a penalty area by saying it's in the general area. So I think you'd have to define it. That's the way I read it.
Right.
Oh, what's a water course?
Anyone smarter than me that
A water course is like a stream or
water course.
Well, yeah. So it'd be like where, say, in rainy times, there's a
runway
area where you might have a little stream, but in the summer it dries up. So it's where water will run if it needs to, but not necessarily all the time.
Boyne. There's quite a few of those on Boyne.
Slot Canyon.
They're just
but yeah, so Mara, I think to answer your question, I think it would be if it is a drainage ditch area and we don't mark it, it technically is. But
I agree.
But
we should
so you still get relief from like a French drain or something unless you say no.
Right. or just mark it, and it because really, you know, now it's not, there's really no difference. I mean, if it's dry and if it's penalty area or through the green, I mean, I don't say there's no difference, but 9 times out of 10 the player's just going to hit that ball, and you know, they'll be fine. And there's no penalty if they touch a loose impediment or they ground their club or whatever. So I think it's less of a factor now, but I still think it's good to know those areas in the course because they could come out.
Just notifying the local.
Right, put it on the sheet. Yep. All right. So what are our options here? These really haven't changed too much. So there's a few slight variations in how the dropping procedure works. But as long as it's in a penalty area, so we have knowledge or virtual certainty, or if it lies in or touches the line or the ground, then it's in that penalty area, or it's above the edge of any part of the penalty area because the boundaries go up in this case.
Hung in a tree.
Huh?
Hung in a tree.
Hung in a tree, yep. That's in a, yep. That's overhanging a penalty area. Yep. And if a ball is both in the penalty area and another part of the course, see Rule 2.2. So what that says is I think it's going to be in the penalty area.
I thought just said if it is or it isn't, depending on where it is. It said if the overhanging branches aren't in the penalty area, that part's not in the penalty area.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That second paragraph is relatively important under 17.1. That's the no complete relief. You can stand in the penalty area
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
after taking relief, so that hasn't changed.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So for penalty areas, that's a good for penalty areas. You're not entitled to a stance. You're really just taking relief from your ball. So a lot of times players will drop really close to the penalty area, and then they'll be like, okay, now I get relief because I'm standing in the water.
Yeah.
Oh, too bad. You should have dropped somewhere else. Yep.
I wish they had said may have to stand instead of may stand. Because that doesn't mean they have to, but they do have to. The ball's in play if they've dropped it properly in the relief area.
Right.
And now they're standing in the hazard. Too bad.
Right. Right. So yeah. So this part here, it's talking about if it's touching another part of the course, it's going to be in the penalty area, is what that rule 2.2c says. But the player can obviously play it out of the penalty area without penalty. That's still an option. And again, we talked about we have some things that we can do now. We can ground our club. We can take practice swings. We can remove loose impediments, provided that they don't cause our ball to move. A lot more flexibility inside the penalty area. Practice strokes. Yep. Provided that we're not improving our next shot. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Take out a few branches and out some space. Okay, but there is one exception to that, is that if your ball is in a no play zone in a penalty area, the player does not have the option to play it as it lies. They have to take relief. And then this is just saying here, as we know, that if the ball is not found, but we have knowledge of virtual certainty, we can go ahead and proceed to take and take relief.
Okay, speaking of no place, by definition, it says if it's a dangerous condition, you can define it as a no play zone. If it poses a danger, it says it poses a danger to players.
Sure.
That's the question they're going to ask about number 8 in Washington, in front of that hill.
Oh.
You really shouldn't walk up it because you
could definitely hurt yourself.
Yeah. We've had a couple of hips from the older players there.
Yeah.
You have to just fall under your keisters, lie down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting question, because do you, I mean,
To me, it's part of the design of the hole. But
right.
The other side of that is I know that the long grass makes it
Right.
very slippery and you can't take a stance there.
Right. Well, so maybe that's a good scenario where you make that a penalty area, and then call it a no play zone penalty area. So they're still having to take a penalty. I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, I don't know.
The hole's been a problem for years.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Number 8 there at Washington, if you make it a no play zone, the women have taken away from there for 30 years. Didn't make it a free relief. The men, on the other hand, played the hole as the hole was. But they never said anything about the women, except when it came to tournament play. And then they said, well, you've been posting scores and not posting correct scores, because you guys are all out there taking relief for something you can't.
Right.
So it was an argument then.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting. We're talking about number 8 at Washtenaw Golf Club. If anyone's been there, and how
That part of the course.
Yeah.
Big slope.
Yeah.
Big slope.
and how to play that. I mean, do you now? Obviously, you've got a lot more options now than you've ever had before in terms of technically doing it by the rules.
Yeah.
You could make it a no play zone and give them free relief. You could make it a no play zone and make it a penalty area. You could make it a penalty area, and you could just play it in the general area. You got a lot of options. And I don't know what the best one is to do. I mean, our first event is made. So
yeah, I wouldn't make it a no play zone.
It always has been, but to the women, it's something different because they, don't have the distance to carry that, and they're all within it. And they get free relief.
Right. Yeah, it is. So we'll have to figure out. I think.
What are you going to do, Tommy?
That's just it.
You only got 2 months to decide.
The thing is, you got to find something that will make sure that I don't want to say pacify. It's not a good term. You find a way to play the ladies and then make it palatable for the men. Because the argument has always been, when it came to the mixed couples tournaments, that the men had been posting their scores correctly for years and the women had. Then you get into the inevitable mismatch about you can't play because you don't have valid scores. We're not going to let you in with that handicap. Because we know that you hit in there all the time and you take free relief. So, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You're just trying to find a way to make it palatable for everybody. And I don't know how to do that.
But it's a junior tournament, they're young.
Well, the junior
tournament, I think.
The junior tournaments we've always played it just like we played the boys or girls out there, or we did the net tournaments out there. We play it as it is. If you hit in there, it becomes an unplayable line, and that's how you get your relief. But there was no free relief.
Right.
But it's still going to be the ladies. I mean, they went so far as start planting flower beds in there.
Mm-hmm.
But you get relief for dangerous animals, but there's no relief for dangerous situations. You just have to do one play.
No, there is. There's a no play zone that says you can define it no play because it's a dangerous position. That's one of the elements of the no play zone.
Right.
That's
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think we'll just play it as it is and play it through general area.
I think in our tournaments,
that's
always going to be a general
right.
area. I think for the club's purposes, we got to find some way to make it play.
Mm-hmm. All right, but again, when we talk about sport, we have to have knowledge of virtual certainty if the ball is in the penalty area. If not, we need to go back to where we last played from. We have a lot of these conversations with players, and we do need to make sure that we're certain that it's in there before we actually take relief.
Are we going to put in the general guidelines that it can't be anyplace else is not virtually certain? How many times have you heard that? So.
I don't know. I say it all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the player's sheet that we hand out. I mean, so that people know. So, I mean, it's one of the things we talked about in our club. You can't just say
that the ball's someplace other than
it can't be anyplace else. That's not virtually certain. So, I mean, that's the argument.
Oh.
I mean, I think that is virtually certain. I mean, that's the thing is that, I mean, that's how I would explain it to people is that, hey, there's nowhere else it could be.
Right.
So it's in there.
Right.
But I think the way maybe to make it a little bit more concrete is to use what the USGA has recommended, the 95%. So, the way I explain it to clubs and people is that if you hit the shot 20 times, 19 of them need to be in there. And so that kind of puts it a little bit more concrete for them to be able to say, okay, it could have hit the tree, it could have ricocheted up somewhere else, it could be stuck in the long grass, it's sopping wet, the ball could have plugged before it got there. A lot of things that could be different now.
I mean, it's one of the complicated situations that, and Lee was the rover and ended up working, I think we were on 11 and 13 and water hazard. I don't remember the court, I just don't remember. But, and he and I had that discussion a number of times when the players would hit their drives on that 13th hole.
And go left and into that long crap.
And then they go, it's got to be there. That's the only place it can be. Well, no, you can't do that. So
players say that, and he went beyond. He was in the long grass beyond the hazard. Just across from the green.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's going to depend on the other conditions around there.
Exactly.
And part of it is how the course marks the hazard. I mean, if you've got long grass just before the hazard, to me, the smart thing would be to put the long grass in the hazard. So then you don't have that issue.
Right. That one there, the long grass is behind the hazard.
Behind the hazard, the trees were all the trees lined the
hanging grass
between the two fairways. So anyway,
All right, so let's get to the picture here because it's really the easiest way to explain it. When we're taking relief with yellow, stroke and distance is pretty straightforward. However, stroke and distance has changed a little bit. So you can see in this picture that our stroke and distance option are number 1, when we go back where we last played from. If it's not on the green or in the teeing area, we now have the point where we last played from the 1 club length in either direction which to drop. So that's a little bit of a change. But if we go back to the tee area, we're going to be able to tee it up anywhere there. If our last place where we played was on the putting green, we're going to place it on that spot. So a tiny change there. Our back in the line relief procedure is very similar, but another small tiny change. So we're still going to use the point where we last crossed the edge of the penalty area and the flag and go back on that line as far back as we want. But when we do, now we're going to have a little bit more room in which to drop. We're not going to necessarily have to drop right back on that line. So this picture here, number 2, covers that. So we crossed where the X is, we go back on line with the flag, and then we're going to pick a reference point where that middle dot is at, and then we get 1 club length in either direction. So if you were watching this weekend, VJ, one club length from the reference point.
Yeah.
So it's technically it's 2, but it's 1.
That's your reference point. One on each side.
So it's 1 on a swivel from the middle.
Keep that point.
That's why I'm having. That's why I'm having trouble with that.
So think of your swivel point as being the middle
it's
there.
Position 1 and position 2.
Exactly.
It's not 1 club, 2 club.
Right. Correct. So what happened with VJ on the weekend? And Craig wanted to fire the rules official. I mean, I got a text immediately. And I think a lot of people.
I'm like, that's wrong.
Yeah,
I turned on the channel right when the announcers were talking about you may have to go back to the way back.
Right.
Because he thought about, it looked like they were talking about maybe playing it, but then he says, if he doesn't get it out of there, they got to go way back.
Right.
I didn't realize that. Apparently, it had
hit over. Yeah. I didn't see it. I probably turned it on the exact same time as you.
And then I thought he was taking a little club length from the margin.
Right. Yeah. And it very much looked like that. But basically, what he did was that his exactly. So if you look at like this picture up here, if we go to
he like hit here, hopped in, and made that his reference point, and came out.
Yeah.
that.
Right, exactly, yeah.
On the camera angle,
Yeah.
looked like he didn't have the right spot.
Right.
It's the angle. He
Right,
did have the right spot.
right. Yep, so he got it, and we can't get him to, that Will's Fish to come volunteer for us anymore. I think was Craig's
Okay, I
ultimate
won't.
goal.
That's
is
why
to-
they don't let people call in anymore.
Yes.
They got your number on speed dial.
But yeah, so that's a little bit of a change, and in VJ's situation, he took advantage of that. I mean, chances are he probably would have had to go back another 5 or 10 yards to drop on that line. Instead, he was able to get one club length out and have an easier shot. So I'm sure that situation came up when they were talking about this, and I think it's just something that in order for them to get that relief area concept for every single time you drop it, this was just kind of one of the casualties, so to speak, is that the player might benefit from that situation. But again, we have that reference point that is going to be something that the player chooses. Okay, so it could be that they put a T in the ground, or they could indicate or they could just say it's that divot in the ground there is my reference point. If they don't mark it, or they don't identify what the reference point is going to be, then it's just going to be where it hits the ground after the player drops it. Where it hits that first time is that reference point, and then you got your one club length, in this case, in either direction on which to drop, side to side, but not closer. Correct.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Correct. Which I think we talked about this before, is that you and then I think Mike wanted it to just be a circle. And I've got that comment multiple times for it being a circle in this case, because it just makes it a lot easier. Anytime we're talking about line back, it would just make it a lot more sense if it was just a circle, but it's not. So
win some, lose some.
Right.
Most people have trouble with pi.
In more ways than one. So, and then this last point here on this relief area, if more than one area of the course is located within one club length, then the ball must come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course where the ball first touched when it was dropped. So if we go to the picture, and this was, maybe there was a bunker right here in the middle of where this player was going back. If part of this was a bunker and part of this was in the general area, the player's relief area would not be this perfect thing. It would just be one or the other, and the player could essentially, I guess, pick and choose, or it depends on where it hits the ground to determine if it's this half or X half. We're talking about two different parts of the course. So really, you'll probably run into that, or you could run into that if players are going back in the line and dropping, and they're dropping between the fairway and a bunker. A lot of times those will be, those could be in close proximity, or a rough and a bunker. And so in that case, that once we determine that reference point, that one club length, if it is in two parts, it's wherever it hits is going to be where the actual relief area is defined as, if that makes sense.
The way I'm reading that is, let's say there's bunker and general area
Mhm.
in the relief area, and
Right.
you drop it in the bunker, that's okay, as long as it stays there.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. All right, and so lateral relief is pretty much exactly the same as it's always been. We're going to find where we last crossed the edge of the penalty area. That X marks the spot. 2 club lengths, no closer to the hole. But again, the small change here is that we do have this relief area concept now. So now the ball has to hit inside that relief area and stay inside that relief area. And again, this is only available for red penalty areas, not for yellow. The easiest way to get DQ'd is to take 2 club lengths from yellow, because 99 times out of 100, you're going to get DQ'd if you do that. And then the other change to the red penalty areas is the opposite margin rule that we used to have is now no longer a rule of golf. However, the committee can put that in play by a local rule if they want. And they can define, it doesn't have to be a blanket too. They could say the lateral relief option for the penalty area on hole number 6 is available. sorry, the opposite side lateral relief options available on hole 6. And then for the other penalty areas on the other holes, it's not, only for that specific one. But that has to be put in by a local rule. And I don't know, Craig, if you, I
don't foresee us using that much, if at all. I don't know.
Right.
I guess it would depend on the course.
Mm-hmm.
Can you envision a course where that would be, we'd want to have that in place? I don't know.
And the only one that I think would not create a huge advantage would be Forest Lake. I mean, the only one that comes to my head where you've got that creek that runs through 16, that it wouldn't really be any advantage one way or the other to drop on either side. And it wouldn't pick. I mean, I guess the other consideration is if it could speed up play,
That's true.
You may want to do it.
Might make a difference if you're right-handed or left-handed when you drop.
True.
Close to that line in the creek where it runs up through 16.
True. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't think we plan on doing this unless it'd be a very, very unique situation. I think probably just easier just to be one less thing for us to remember.
All right. Come in at 13 on Plum Hollow if you had a really bad water on the left side, fairway side.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want to actually take it over to the other side. Might be a little drier or something.
Yeah, it might be.
That's the only thing I could think of. Where
Could be a committee decision if you do that or not.
Yeah.
You hate to start doing it. Then, because players become used to it or not used to it, then it's like.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's
confusions.
That's typically yellow there, which was Tony's point, and that's a good point. Is that I mean that most of that area is typically yellow.
It's yellow. Yes. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. That's right.
Right.
The one before. Yeah, because the red. Well.
Red up on because it goes up.
It's red, right?
Bridge, it goes yellow.
Until you get to the first bridge, it's red. But there are guys that try to do that, block it out a little bit, and get it up there, and there is a spot up there.
Yep.
But you're in the hazard. I don't. That's all yellow.
There's only two
I have
or
a
three
question.
places.
Go back to the yellow relief picture.
Yeah.
What happens if a player hits it over the green, so now they're hitting their next shot from behind the green, all right? They then scull it over the green into the hazard. All right, besides playing their original place, what are the other options they would have?
Yeah, so let's just say for your example that it crosses here at this point, then we would have this line back here. So, but we'd have to go back. We always have to keep the ball, the water, and the flag in that order.
So even if they hit it, you're on the other side of the putting green.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so if they hit it from over here,
right,
and I sculled my chip shot because I've got the chip yips, and then I go back here.
You can always do stroke of distance.
You still have stroke of
Oh yeah,
distance.
Right. Yeah, that's what he's. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Besides that.
Yep. Yeah, and that could happen. I mean, you'll see a lot of times too, especially from bunkers. That will happen a lot. I mean, this year now with the dropping is a little bit easier in bunkers, so that might not plug as much. That might be more of a viable option.
Tiger Woods did that 1 year with 13 at the Masters from the putting green. He put it the green off the green right in the water.
Yeah.
Took stroke of distance.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kyle, could you explain that one more time? Because I have an issue there.
Okay, sure. Is your issue related to your understanding of the rule or something else? Just kidding.
Well, it relates to VJs, but if you're in a bunker, you can't see my pointer. Okay, you're in a bunker right where yours is.
Yeah.
Null it over, and it crosses at the dotted line right there. Or I can't. Go ahead and scull your shot into the front of the water house. Right there, okay.
Okay.
Why can't you take relief from that reference point right there where you had the arrow, one club length, no closer to the hole, and keep the water out of play, like VJ did? In other words, coming along the side here.
Oh, well, because you're see, VJ's reference point was like over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his back on a line is here, whereas here your back on a line is just going back farther in the water. So it's all just about the geometry of where that X marks the spot is.
Yeah, but Your reference point is right there where it crossed. Put your arrow back there. Where it crossed.
Right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
And if you go sideways.
Well, so sorry. Let's sorry. That's not the reference point. That's where we last crossed. We just want. I mean, I think you're talking about the same thing, but just to be clear, that's not the reference point. The reference point is where that big dot is next to number 2. That's our reference point.
Okay.
So where our X marks the spot is where the pointer was.
Yes.
But not the reference point.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I'll have to go. Okay, it hit a tree between the front of the hazard and the flagstick. It hit a tree on this side of the. Yep. I'm using my pointer, and I know you can't see. This is funny. Okay, and it went back into the hazard.
Okay.
Okay. Where's your reference point? And you have to keep the hazard between you and the flagstick.
Yes. So let's just use this example here. Player hits the shot from the fairway here, ricochets off this tree.
Right.
Comes back and crosses right here.
Okay.
So in this case, this is my X marks the spot, and my reference and my line back is going to go right on this line here.
Right.
And then at some point in time, I'm going to be able to take my one club length no closer here.
That's correct. So you don't have to keep the hazard. You don't have to shoot over the hazard in theory.
Not in that case.
On that scenario.
Not in that case. And I think now I get your question, because I think so basically your question before was, well, if this is where you last crossed.
That's correct.
Then why can't you just take your one club length relief right here, right?
Correct, just like DJ.
Okay, I get your question now, and I think the answer is that you don't have your reference point is nowhere in that case, because in VJ's case, or in this case over here, your reference point is literally just past where the hazard or where the penalty area stops.
Okay.
And so at that very small point, you can take your one club length, but you can't go from the actual line itself.
All right.
It's from a spot outside the line.
The reference point could be closer to the X if you wanted it to be. It just couldn't be right at the X.
Correct.
It could be a little bit back, and then you could still have a spot there where you'd just be going over that corner, sort of.
Right. Does that make sense, Mike? So that your reference point needs to be not in the penalty area, so that's why you couldn't just take your one club length on this side.
I'll talk to you next week.
Hopefully.
You can't wait.
He wants to see that picture.
All right.
Blown up and.
All right.
All right. I don't want to hold you up.
No, that's a good question though. All right. So then we'll go.
This is Joe Bolter. I have a question on that opposite side of the penalty area.
Right.
I think it was at I put it on chat. I think it was the 8th hole at Boyne, where a lot of players were hitting into that water from the left side.
Right.
It's a dog leg left, big pine tree, about 300 yards off the tee, and it was a big advantage there if they could take opposite side relief. So that may be one place when you run that tournament this coming summer that you consider using that.
Yeah, definitely. I could see it coming in play there for sure. And maybe something that we consider, or at least alert players that, hey, you don't have this option anymore, because a lot of them probably did use it.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that area to the left is very sandy and gravelly and not very good stances. That they brought it to the opposite side. They could go back on a point of relief and actually put it in the fairway.
No, once you go to the opposite side.
It's 2 club lengths only.
Yeah,
go
once
back
you go
on line.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, but there are two club lengths on that side, as I recall, brought them to the fairway.
Correct. Yeah, it could still get them to the fairway in that hole, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good example. All right, let's try to get through a few more slides here. Oh geez, no play zones. Gosh. All right. So if the ball is in the no play zone in a penalty area, the player has to take relief, no option. Okay. Now, but if the no play zone interferes with the stance or swing, then if the player's ball is in the penalty area and is outside a no play zone, but a no play zone, whether it's part of an abnormal course condition or in a penalty area, interferes, this is a different penalty area, interferes with his or her area of intended stance or area of swing, the player must either take relief outside the penalty area, or they can take free relief by dropping the original ball or another ball in the relief area, if it exists, and then that has to be in the penalty area. So the example that we talked about was that the player's stance had interference. The ball was not in the penalty area though, it was not in the no play zone defined as a penalty area. So in that case, the player can drop the ball in the penalty area without penalty, and then they can either play it from the penalty area, or at that point, if they want to take relief, they have that option at that point. So I think we pretty much covered this earlier when we talked about no play zones. I think it's probably.
Unless Mike's got a question on it.
Mike's question was actually really good. Like once I got it, it was. I'm not saying that he doesn't ask a good question all the time, but it was actually it was a really good question to think about.
He can still hear you.
I like the exception.
But there is no free relief from interference by the no play zone under number 2. Talking about these similar situations we've had before is when playing the ball as it lies is clearly unreasonable because something other than the no play zone made it impractical to play or whatever. Or if the player only has interference because of an abnormal or a different stance or swing or direction of play, that's unreasonable. So those kind of two things come up quite a bit in a lot of different rules. Just like they did previously, they're still in play now. All right. Any questions about no play zones and how that works?
Again.
All right. Let's stop before we get into these next two ones. This is just, again, if the ball is played from a penalty area, comes to rest in the same penalty area. In just a couple of situations, and just like previously, the diagrams that they have in the book are really the best way to understand this because we can go through the words, but it's just a lot easier to look at it and go through the examples. So we'll do that next week, and then we'll also get into 18 and then 19 and then probably 20 as well because 18 and 19 are pretty straightforward. And then at that point, we should be close to being done, but we'll figure out a few more sessions because we still have a few more weeks. Just like I said earlier at the beginning, I'll let everyone know as soon as possible about next week, whether we're going to have it. Hopefully, I have an email or a voicemail from Meadowbrook saying that they'll let us come out there.